Hi there, my name is Jake Smeester, and I am the Content and Media Specialist for Amazon Sumerian. In this video, we are going to do a tutorial walkthrough of the Triggering Host Emotes tutorial. The Triggering Host Emotes tutorial can be found on our documentation and tutorial website called Triggering Host Emotes. But we're going to walk through that so you can actually get a visual, and so we can give some other explanations for some things for those of you that just like video. So what is this tutorial? This tutorial utilizes what's an important piece of Sumerian, which are hosts. Hosts are digital characters that we provide and that we have built that you can use, that can be the interactive digital characters. They have animations. You can add on speech components to them so they can actually speak. Using Amazon Poly, they can actually speak back a speech that you create and that you write. And so by doing that, you can create a speech, add it to them, set it to lip sync, and then the host will actually talk through your speech. The cool thing is that it uses, like I said, Amazon Poly, and Amazon Poly comes with a lot of really great voices that are very realistic, that are not nearly as robotic as a lot of the kind of the old computer-generated voices have been in the past. And so it's something that's really, really useful in a lot of different ways. We're not going to be doing any speech components today, but we will be just looking at some hosts in general. We're going to be looking at some animations, specifically the emote animations, which we've already built into the hosts, which are things like being bored and getting excited and clapping and kind of emotive animations or emotional animations. So that's what we're going to be looking at today. We're also going to be using the state machine and initializing those animations based on the keyboard actions. So pressing keys to then start animations on your host. So let's get into it. Right, we are at the dashboard here, looking at some some other scenes that we've created and looked at in the past, and some other things we will look at in the future. But we will go down and start with the default lighting scene. As you know, the default lighting scene is a great place to start because it's created by many of our experts that know lighting, and it's a good scene. It's a good template to start with. So we're going to start there. So we'll call this the Triggering Host Emotes video and hit create. Yes, I do recommend the default lighting scene template. It has great lights, so you don't have to add lights. It has a nice sky sphere in the background, so you don't have to add anything. It's not bland. It actually looks and feels like a real universe or a real world getting started. All right, the first thing we need to do is import a host. And so what we do is we go to the Import Assets button. We click that. The Import Assets button will then take us to the Asset Library. The Asset Library is a library full of 3D assets and models and things that have been created by our team that are available to you, and so you can use them as much as you want. And there's furniture in here. There's a rug. There's a TV. There's tables. There's some some audio tracks and sounds. There's also the Cairo toaster, which is used in a different video that we did a couple days ago. The Sumerian flag, which is used in another it will be used in a state machine tutorial here in the future. Today we will be using Christine. So Christine is a host. We will click on her and click add. The downside of hosts is that they can take a little bit of time to load. So it looks like everything is done, but it's not. Trust me, it's still loading. One thing I will mention while we're waiting is hosts are, well, two things. Number one, I'm using Chrome for a reason, and that's because I was having issues just a little bit earlier with Firefox. Though we do recommend you use Firefox most of the time unless there are some bugs that can happen. They are updating things, we are updating things, and we are always trying to make it so you can use either browser, but we do recommend you use Firefox, and there will be cases in which one of them might an update on Firefox or might make something break a little bit. So just be wary of that. As we are in limited preview, we are working through many of those features and improvements. Like I said, I was having some issues earlier today, which is why I'm using Chrome, but I would recommend you use Firefox as long as it is working. The second thing is hosts are very heavy, and so that while we're waiting here, hosts can take a little while to load. They once they're in your scene and actually loaded, they work great, but it just takes a little bit of time, more than other assets, to actually load. Okay, so let's return to our scene. As you see, it says save failed. That is not true. It did not fail, but again, I'm using Chrome, and that is one of the reasons that it's saying that. Okay, so Christine is not yet in our scene. She is in our asset panel over here, which means we just need to drag the Christine entity into our scene, into our new world, by just dragging the entity, which you can tell the entity by the hexagon icon, so the only thing under the pack right now. But drag that onto the scene. Again, give it a minute or two, well, probably not that long. Give it a few seconds to let Christine actually load. She will load into the center of the world, into the center of our scene. There she is. I'm going to hit the F key to focus, to frame her in the middle of our view window. There she is. There's Christine. All right. Christine comes with a lot of stuff here. So I'm going to expand over here in the entities panel. I'm going to expand her hierarchy, and I'm going to click on the host entity. This is where you can see some more of the things that I was talking about before, like animations. If I open animations, there's a bunch of animations that she naturally comes with, like pointing and some generic movements, some idle animations, heart animations, which is kind of like pointing at her heart, some like an animation that goes many. There's just a lot of animations, and these are really gesture animations that you can use when you're actually building a gesture speech. We're not covering that today, but that's what's involved in the Christine entity. Let's press play and actually just see what happens when you enter in a host. All right, so she is there. She is just kind of doing this, what we call an idle animation. She's just kind of standing, swaying back and forth a little bit. If we zoom in, you can kind of see that her hands are moving. Oops, trying to zoom in there. There we go. That's a good angle of it. You can see her hands moving around a little bit. Her eyes, she's blinking. She's moving back and forth. That's the idle animation. So it's just an animation that just loops continuously. As we didn't want her to be stagnant. We wanted her to actually have a little bit of movement and make it more realistic. And so that's the idle animation. But if you press any keys or anything, nothing else happens because we haven't created anything in which she'll respond. But that's what we're going to do today. So we're going to stop the scene. We're going to select the Christine parent entity over here. And then we're going to click Add Component in the Inspector panel. We're going to scroll down and select State Machine. We have done state machines in the past, and so we're going to do another one today. We don't have any behaviors. State machines, if you don't recall, state machines create behaviors. So behaviors can be really anything. It can be a movement. It can be an action. It can be playing a sound. It can be triggering an emotional or emotive animation, which is what we're going to do today. So it can happen, and what it usually involves, though, is it allows the user to interact with the scene. So what we're going to be building is the ability to press a key and then trigger an animation. So that's what we need to use the state machine for. So we're going to create a new behavior by pressing the plus button over here. I'm going to drag up our state machine editor. And here we are. We're in the state machine. We have one state. And, let's actually rename the behavior first by trigger host emotes. Okay, so with this selected state, I'm going to collapse that and call this key press. Okay, the thing that we need to add here are, we're going to use 3 different emote animations. And so with 3 different emote animations, we need 3 different keys in which to trigger those emotes. So what we're going to do is we're going to add 3 key pressed actions. So I search for key press, it pulls up as the top option. So I select it, I hit add, and you see on key A pressed. And over here in the inspector panel, the key pressed action and the key that it is associated with, A. But we need 2 more, so we're going to add action. It's already selected. We just hit add action, hit add again. So now we have 3 key pressed actions, but right now they all have A. Well, we'll keep one as A, the second one will do S, and the third will do D. Okay, so now we have one state with 3 different actions involved in it. They're very all similar, but they're associated with different keys. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is create a new state. I'm going to drag this over so you can actually see it. So it'll show itself, the add state button. So we're going to add another state. We need an action that will actually play the emotes. So we're going to search for emote, and the top one is play emote. And so we're going to select that. Now over here is the play emote act. Well, let's see. Let's do this backwards, I guess. What emote do we want to play? There are 3 different emotes. We're going to select the board, and then we'll rename this state as board, so it matches the actual emote. Okay, and then we are going to add another state. We're going to add action. Play emote is still there. What emote do we want to do? We've already used board, so let's do applause, and then we'll rename state applause. And then another way to do this is you can just duplicate the state. So now I have 2 applause, but let's change this because we have this bottom one selected. We'll change that one to cheer, and then we'll rename it cheer. Okay. So here we are. I'm going to drag this up a little bit so you can see it. Again, we have 4 different states, one with a key press, and then 3 states, one each with a play emote action. So what we need to do is we need to transition from these actions to these states and then back again. So I'm going to connect the key A press to the board state, and then I'm going to go back. One thing to note is when you're doing the state machine is that everything should almost always be in a circle, usually. Meaning you shouldn't just have, in most situations, you're not going to often have one state going to another state and not returning to that state or on to another state. Because usually if that's the case, then nothing else can happen. It's the behavior can't be reactivated because it's done. So that's why we need to transition to the board and then back to the key press. I'll explain this a little bit more once you see it. Oops. So select key on key D pressed and then returned back. So what this is that on key A pressed, Christine is just waiting for one of these 3 keys to be pressed. As soon as it does, whatever key it'll transition to the corresponding action. So if the A key is pressed, it sends it over to the board action. Once the emote ends, this is the action here. When the emote ends, it will return it back to this state of waiting for a key press. Maybe a better way to actually say this is waiting for key press. It's probably a better way to title it. So waiting for key press, if A is pressed, it sends it to the board, it initiates that action, and then it's on the emote's end. When it is done, when it completes, it goes back to the waiting for key press. When the S key is pressed, it sends it, if you follow this transition, to the applause, and again, When that applause emote is done, it sends it back. Same thing with the D. Once it's pressed, it goes to cheer, and then when the cheer emote is done, it goes back to waiting for key press. So the entity is always going to be in one of these states. So it's either going to be waiting for a key press, or it's going to be actually performing one of the emotes. So let's actually let's see what happens. So let's press play. She's a little bit small, but I want to make sure we can see all three. So I'll zoom in a little bit, and I'll pan up. Okay, so let's see it. So as you can see, she is in the waiting for key press state. So she's just waiting. She's not going to do anything until something happens. And so I'm going to press the A key, and you'll see it goes over to the bored emote. And she yawns, she puts her hands on her hips, and pretends to fall asleep. The emote is done, and so then it returns back to the waiting for key press state. I press the S key, it goes to the applause. She claps, and then once it's done, it goes back. I press the D key, and it goes to cheer. She cheers, and goes back. What is different if you did look at the flying a drone tutorial? The difference between the key press and the on key down or on key up is that those actions are involved in holding a key down. See, for this, all it needs to do is press the key once. It doesn't really matter if you hold it or not. Once it's pressed, it will transition to one of the associated action and state. So that's kind of the difference between on key, like a key pressed action versus an on key down or on key up, is that it's waiting for something to be pressed and held, and then it's waiting for it to be lifted up again. So let's close out of the state machine so you can get a little bit better of what she's doing here. I haven't stopped the scene. It's still in play mode. And again, she's still waiting. Actually, let me go back, because and to re-edit something, you open up the state machine to re-edit a behavior. You click this pencil icon to open that back up to edit the behavior. Okay, again, see how it's just waiting for a key press. So if we didn't have these actions, let me show you what happens here. If I delete that transition and then I hit the D pressed key, or I hit the D key, let me try it again. Let me stop, press play. Ooh, I'm sorry, I was hitting the F key. That's why. Okay, so I hit the D key, and then she cheers, but there's no transition to send it back to waiting for key press. So it's stagnant on the cheer, but the cheer is done. So it's not going to play again because there's nothing to tell it to play again, and it can't go back to this waiting state because nothing sends it back. That's why you must always have to actually create transitions to return things or kind of continue behaviors in a loop of some kind. Okay. Let's see if there's anything else I wanted to cover. I don't think so. I think that's pretty much it. So I'm going to close out of that. I'm going to press play again. Press the A key. She gets bored. Kind of falls asleep. Now she's waiting for us to press a key. Hit the S key. She gets really excited and cheers. That's over. We can press the D key. Now, what happens if I press an emote, and then while she's in the middle of that emote, I press another key? Nothing will happen because it's still in that emote state. She's not waiting to hear another key press. So nothing will happen. You got to wait till it actually returns back to that waiting state. And once it does, you can hit another key or another key or to initiate another emote. And I pressed it too soon, pressed it again, and she cheers. All right, that is host emotes and the state machine and animations and a few different stuff going on in this tutorial. If you have any questions, please reach out to us on Twitter. I'm at Jake Smeester, or on Twitch. You can chat me. Whoa, my computer's really heating up here. Should probably stop before it blows up. You can reach out to me on Twitch, ask any questions you want, and we will get back to you as soon as we can on Twitter, on Twitch, on Slack, amazonsumerian.slack.com. Reach out to us there. We'd love to help you out. We'd love to have you help us out to figure out what we can do to improve and what kind of content and video tutorials and what help you can do and how we can help you. So let us know and join us next time. Thanks.